is going on, Rotogrinders? Dean here at Dean 7904 if you want to get all technical on me. It's actually 11:25 on the East Coast, 8:25 on the West Coast. Good morning, West Coast. 10:25 Tennessee time, which of course means it's time for the flagship show here at Rotogrinders. It's called Grinderslive. We're talking baseball. It's opening day. Super, super excited. I love this combination. Derek Carty, you know him from the Blitz, you know him from the Bat. What's up, Carty? Another baseball season. Let's go.
Let's go is right. I am so excited for baseball season, for a full 162 game schedule. I am so pumped.
Well, the one game, Baltimore and Boston is not starting their game one of 162 today because I won't go through my pre-show rant, Carty, but the whole idea of all these teams, whoever makes these schedules and puts the hot weather teams on the road and the cold weather teams at home during the opening day, whatever. Hey, tell the people, I'll say the rant for another day, I suppose. It's opening day. We don't have time for this nonsense. Tell the people about the Bat, Carty, if they're not aware.
Yeah, if you're not aware of the Bat, where have you been living for the last few years? The Bat is my projection system. It's done really well. Users love it. In accuracy tests last year, it projected as the most accurate season-long system last year. The Bat X was introduced last year. It uses StatCast data. It's really cool. Lots of bonus features, stack projections, ceiling projections, podcasts during the week, like lots of stuff. If you haven't looked into it yet, please do. I'm biased, but I really think it's fantastic.
Hey, I'm going to put you on the spot, Blender. I feel like you've spoken positively about the Bat, so feel free. Blender, of course. Like I said, I love this combination of the two of us, the three of us, because Carty has that cash game brain and Blender has I'm going to do the complete opposite of things that make sense. And it works amazing, from a predictive standpoint. And that's kind of an oxymoron because baseball is not very predictable. Talk about it, greatest player in the world, Mike Trout goes 0 for 5, 20% of the times or whatever it is. He can put up a 0. It doesn't work the way basketball works, yes or no to baseball. Blender, I need a little more. My brain is more Carty centric. I need a little more. I'm not going to go full Blender. I don't know if you ever go full Blender. Only Blender can go full Blender, but I need a little more Blender in my baseball game this year. What's going on, dude? Are we excited for the baseball season? Welcome to the show.
I'm excited. I'm normally up at 11 in the morning Eastern time, 10 o'clock Tennessee time, to do the pregame show. And now that we have some weekday kind of slates for MLB. It almost feels like you guys are taking over my show, kind of like we're doing like a hybrid. But I don't have to review yesterday's slate.
You got a red tag in your locker. Sorry, Blender.
Right, but I'll with GPPs, I'll be here telling you to play whoever you want, and looking to stack against own pitchers and play teams that have a 3.7 implied run totals and go. Well, if you do this every day and maybe you win $100,000 once, and if you could do that, you're profitable.
Yeah, so you have to have the mentality for that, right? You have to have the mentality for losing 20, 25 slates in a row. But when you win that one slate, you can go 1-26 and be profitable. And I don't know if everybody has that mentality. And
right.
Hey, bankroll matters. Alex Santry, I'm not sure if he's in the chat right now, but I tweeted out earlier today. He had a great article as far as baseball, as far as game management, as far as game selection. And it's one of the least sexy conversations you can have. But that's one of the reasons why I'm still around. I'm still profitable because of game selection. It matters so much. Feel free to speak to that. And I'm just curious, what is you're okay. You're perfectly fine in losing 25 days in a row because
yes,
it's coming. It's coming.
Well, just build plus EV lineups. Basically, you have to play GPPs like our good friend Rugned Odor. I don't know where he's going to be playing this year, but he's a Bat favorite. But we all know Rugned, right? He'll go 1 for 26. So he'll go 1 for 26.
Then he's due. I think that's how it works. That's how math works, right?
But when he's on, he hits 3 home runs in a game, and that's where all the median comes from. So his range of outcomes, most games is 0, but when he's 2,600 or something, you play him every day. Eventually he gets there. So that's why. But it doesn't mean you have to play all garbage stacks and vomit all over the place and cheap pitchers. It just means dedicate, if I'm playing in MLB, 60 lineups. I think I'm playing 80 on FanDuel today and 40 on DraftKings. That I will always look for these 4-man, 5-man, 5-man for under 20K, top of the order types of stacks, because baseball has such high variance that, at 2% ownership, if they're the highest scoring team, you pair them with, chalk pitchers and some other chalk. And next thing you know, people are asking you like, why do you have a Jorge Alfaro jersey? And I'm like, well, Vomit Marlins stack, 50K, give it to me. So
why would you play the Marlins though? They're terrible.
Oh, not every day. There's going to be a couple of days the Marlins put up 10 plus runs. You just have to find the right days for them.
They're in one of the better weather games by default today in Marlins Park with a controlled weather environment because, like we said before, already one game's been canceled. Baltimore and Boston's been canceled. If you guys are playing the night slate, the Mets game was canceled. I think that was for COVID issues on the Washington side. We're looking at the 40s as far as the Yankees in Toronto, and it is worth noting we're going to break it down by slates, obviously. Well, the DK's main slate does not start till 2:00, or I guess 2:10 if you want to get all technical. I believe it's 2:10. Yeah. Of course, FanDuel still has the the two games that are starting at 1:10. Two studs there, Bieber and Cole, respectively. Cardi, can you speak to this before we kind of like fully get going? And I'm sure there's some new people in the chat that are coming over from basketball, and it's not a predictive sport. You're supposed to embrace variance. Of course, in cash games, you build the optimal lineups and just that's the weird thing, Cardi. Like you could be so locked in on a slate. You can play all the right plays. You can know all the woes. You should know who's got positive variance and negative variance and who's, in a good spot. And you can put up the worst possible score. You just have to accept that. Like I did all the right stuff, and sometimes it just doesn't work. Your thoughts on that and how you deal with that, and also what up with the new baseballs? Because do we know it's just still a mystery? Are these going to be juiced? Are they de-juiced? Is that the word they're using? What are we expecting?
Yeah, so I mean, baseball is very different than NBA. There is a lot more variance, and that's part of the fun of the game. You just need to embrace it. You need to realize that, I mean, Blender was kind of saying it, like, and it goes for cash games too. You can go on a stretch of 2, 3, 4 weeks where you're just making all the right plays and you're losing, and that's baseball. And then you go 2, 3, 4 weeks, and all you can do is win. And it feels like the easiest game in the world. And you have to be prepared for those swings if you're playing baseball, and you have to play it for the long game. Like this is DFS, it's daily fantasy. It's really not daily. You have to approach it long-term or you're doing it wrong. As far as the ball goes, just who knows? Like we got a report from Eno Saris and Ken Rosenthal a few weeks ago. MLB has changed the ball. They're trying to de-juice it. They're trying to reduce the home run rates. And so that was the expectation. Then yesterday, we get this bombshell report from Rob Arthur and Ben Lindbergh, where they studied the ball in spring training. And their expectation ultimately is that the ball is actually potentially going to be more juiced than it was because MLB didn't run full tests on the ball. They didn't test the drag, which I don't know. I mean, okay. And so based on reports in spring training and the data in spring training, it looks like the ball could lead to more home runs, perhaps more home runs than we've ever seen before, and more strikeouts. And so that's kind of the assumption now, but it really could fall anywhere between those two expectations because who really knows?
Yeah. By the way, baseball can screw anything up. Like I don't want to go on the rant, but like I know you like this, Cardi, for DFS purposes because it's an edge, but like the fact that there's no DH in the National League is just unreal. And like, why would we want to suppress scoring? Like people love homers, but the favorite part of the game for almost everybody. Like, why would you want to suppress home runs for marketing purposes?
It was a weird thing that MLB wanted that as their goal. But I am very much a fan of the flip-flopping of the DH because when people go and they look at the stat lines of National League pitchers, they're not going to be fully considering the context of, okay, 1 year there's no DH, then there's a DH, now there's no DH again. And so I think that is definitely going to give us edge when using a projection system like the BAT that is perfectly able to account for that kind of thing, as opposed to people kind of just eyeballing the numbers because it's completely different context for these pitchers.
Well, you mentioned drag, and I guess Kevin Roth, chief meteorologist, he possibly can speak to that. He is free today. I just dropped his link there in chat. What up, chat? He's got the weather link that's going down there as well. He'll update that the closer we get to lock, and of course, he gives you the most updated update on Crunch Time. And Crunch Time is free today, not just with Kevin Roth. He's going to be talking to two-time millionaire winner Dave Potts. Cheese is good. If you guys are not reading his musings, what are you doing? That's part of the RG Premium product. And hey, if you guys want to get RG Premium, this is a good time to do so. You get basketball, you get baseball, you get it all. You can get it a la carte if you want. You can get just one sport, just baseball. That works just fine as well. get 10% off, or you get all the sports with the exception of NASCAR, which is its loan product. But yeah, 10% off that as well. Links are dropped in chat. Hey, chat, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We do appreciate that. That keeps the proverbial lights on. And this is an interactive show. We're going to be asking these guys questions. Devin usually would come on if it's a 2-man booth, but if it's a 3-man booth, he's going to be throwing the questions my way. Cash questions, Cardi, you drew the cash questions today. And Blender, I'm sure, is going to absolutely love, hey, this guy or that guy in tournaments. Blender, you're gonna have a fun time with that. There's nothing you like more than saying, hey, should I play Giancarlo Stanton or Aaron Judge? You love that kind of question, don't you?
Oh yeah, I love the ones where it's number one, either look at the projections, or number two, just whatever fits with your lineup. There you go.
Blender, how are you getting different? We're going to talk about this late in a second. Talk pitchers, obviously, at the top. And then again, a little bit different on FanDuel. Only one starting pitcher, obviously. Correlation matters a little bit more as far as the scoring as well, too. You get the quality start. And they're adding the Cleveland-Detroit game, the Toronto-New York game. That's why we're starting the show early. We want to get those 2 early games in. But how are you attacking the slate, and how are you getting different? Because, 2 of the better weather situations have 2 of the best offenses in all of baseball. We're not going to be telling you guys anything you don't know. Hey, the Dodgers, yeah, Blender, have you heard this? They're in a good spot today because they're facing the Rockies at Coors Field. Do you know about Coors Field? You've heard about it, right?
I've watched a game or 2. Yes, yes. I think I know what happens at Coors Field.
And then the Padres, who have a ridiculous good offense, 85 degrees we're expecting out there in San Diego versus Madison Bumgarner, who used to be really good. He's kind of a faded name brand, and he's especially vulnerable to righties. And there's plenty of righty power in that San Diego side. So yeah, those are the quote unquote, like, that's the plays. Of course, we live in a wonderful salary cap. You got to make it work. It's not that hard, especially in DK. There's some really good players that have really good prices. It's not hard to make a cash game lineup on DraftKings today. How are you going to be different, though? Well, what is the plan of attack?
Well, I think on this slate, I think the biggest edge. I don't want to call it an edge, because the pricing on both sites is soft. I mean, we have parts of orders normal priced, and then 2 guys that are, why are they under 3K, like those types of situations. So the pitching, most people, like, my vomit strategy typically is to attack these crappy teams that have 20K 5-man stacks. So that's why it ends up being the Marlins and the Tigers and the Pirates and those types of teams. But we have good teams that are cheap enough. They may not be 20K, but 21K. Now, the purpose of that is that you're going to jam in probably 2 high-quality stud pitchers. The problem is that in the beginning of the season, like, none of these guys are going to be pitching 100 pitches. I mean, so is it worth paying 10.4K for Darvish, or 10.1K for Nola, or 9,500 for Kershaw in Colorado, or what? I mean, it feels like I don't need to pay for pitching, but they priced the pitching down. So you have Castillo at 9,200 and Woodruff at 8,000 and Glasnow at 8,800. So if you could get whatever you want, the type of slate. So most people are going to go to the Dodgers. They're going to go to the Padres, because why wouldn't you? Like, it's a why wouldn't you? The Dodgers have a 6 point whatever implied run total. The Padres have a 5.2 implied run total. Then every other team on the slate is like high 3s, low 4s. Like, it's so obvious that they project the best. What I think that's going to happen is that I think that's going to inflate that their ownership so much that now normally I would go to a vomit stack. I would say, okay, well, everyone's going to play an expensive Dodgers stack or an expensive Padres stack. So let me play the cheap stack with 2 stud pitchers. Well, there's no 2 stud pitchers. So how do you get different today? By fading the stack. It doesn't mean you don't play Dodgers or Padres. You fade the expensive stack, but you don't play a vomit stack. You just play another expensive stack. You play a stack that is 22K, a 5-man, because who's gonna stack the Rays today? With I mean, Joey Wendell is like overpriced. Like, these guys, they're obviously overpriced.
Yeah,
that'll reduce the ownership, and it's going to be so condensed on 2 or 3 teams that doesn't mean you fade those hitters. It's just that you play the 5-man stack. That you're still playing Woodruff, you're still playing Glasnow, you're still playing some of the good pitchers that are cheap enough, I guess. But that, to me, that's the only way you get different. I mean, and still have a good enough projection.
The Dodgers have a team total today, according to our RG page, of 6.63, which is less than a half a run than Pittsburgh and the Cubs are expected to score. Their total is 7. And that's a game where Chad Kuhl is pitching. If you want to know how horrific the hitting weather is in Chicago, I know those batting lineups, especially on the Pittsburgh side, not terribly imposing, but 35 degrees is the projected weather. Of course, we know weather matters so much in baseball. That's why we have Roth. Of course, he's going to be on again one more time, free today with crunch time. And it matters even more so in Wrigley. Is it still called? It's still called Wrigley, right? They haven't sold out just yet. I don't believe they have. And also, I think there's either blowing in or a crosswind as far as the winds. 2.77 is the total for Pittsburgh today. All right, pitchers, Cardi, give me our cash game pitchers. Of course, it's opening day, so all the all the number ones are out there. Yes, I guess Chad Kuhl is a number one by default. Even Brad Keller and Kyle Gibson, sure, why not? And there's a huge opportunity cost, obviously, to pitchers as well too. And as Blender was talking about, it's not that hard to get premium pitching and premium hitting just because the pricing is pretty soft. How do you sort through and decipher, pick your favorite amongst all these studs?
Yeah, it's actually weird. My favorite pitcher of the day is not one of those studs. He's not a guy that projects for high ownership. And I'm sitting here scratching my head like, why is this guy not the highest owned pitcher on the slate? It's Kyle Hendricks. Why are people not on Kyle Hendricks? Like, he's one of probably the best 25 or 30 best pitchers in baseball. He's facing a terrible Pirates lineup that is much more strikeout heavy than they have been in the past, especially with the pitcher back hitting. And it's this amazing weather at Wrigley Field. It's 35 degrees with close to 20-mile-an-hour winds blowing in. Like, why? And he's 7.7K. He's so cheap. Like, there's literally no difference between Hendricks, Darvish, Nola, Castillo, Glasnow, Woodruff. They all project basically the same today. And Hendricks is 7.7K in this amazing spot. He doesn't have the strikeout rate of these other guys, but he is much more efficient than them. He goes deeper into games, so he kind of makes that up a little bit. And you just can't beat the price in the matchup. So, like, I don't get why Hendricks isn't just the automatic first guy in for everybody.
We do dollar for dollar rankings here, myself and like 3 or 4, depending on the day. Cheese is good. Dave Fox is in there as well. And one of us ranked dollar for dollar Kyle Hendricks as the number 1 pitcher today on DraftKings. I'm with you, Cardi. And like, it's a combination. And the thing is, I never play Hendricks. He's a great real life pitcher. He's not sexy at all, but like, he's also a guy, he might drop a Maddox. I feel like he did this last year. Did he drop like an opening day, like CGSO, which you never see on opening day? Who drops a CGSO on opening day? These guys aren't fully stretched out. But the Pirates offense, as you referenced, they are completely inept. Less than 3 as far as a total, and not just how bad their offense is, but that pitching environment is phenomenal as well too. Do we have a umpire data just yet, or do we don't have usually that when a series starts? How do we not know that an opening day? Come on, MLB. No.
Yeah, we don't have any umpire data yet. We'll have to see, I guess, when we get that. Prior to last year, we were getting it at least a couple hours before game time. Last year, they were giving it to us like after game started. So we'll have to see. I'm really hoping they go back to giving it to us early.
Well, that's helpful. It's the 3rd inning. There is their home plate umpire. I fired up the Plate IQ here, which is my favorite tool at Rotogrinders. Is one of the things you get obviously with RG Premium. And I know it sounds like I'm just pumping it up, but this is the first place I go. And it's great to look at season stats. Well, you hear people say, well, this team strikes out a lot versus lefties. They strike out a lot. Well, I want to know about the lineup specifically today. How much do they strike out versus lefties? How much do they strike out versus righties? And you referenced the Pittsburgh lineup, and I pulled it up right now, and their K percent and Ks are king, obviously, when it comes to pitching. Hendricks, this is the last 2 seasons for what it's worth. I guess a season and a third, because it was like 60 games last year. Not a case of off by any means, 19.5%, but he will give you volume. He's a guy that can, on opening day even, give you 7 innings. But this Pittsburgh lineup, we're talking about Polanco striking out with 37% of the time, Stallings 30% of the time, Alford 26%, Reynolds 27%, collectively 24.7%. There are some Ks there to be had, and again, run suppression should be real as well. Blender, how do you feel? Are you comfortable with Kyle Hendricks? He's not a massive upside, but maybe through sheer volume, not a sexy play.
One more fun fact about Kyle Hendricks before we let Blender talk about him. I ran projections for the whole weekend because that's part of the bat package. So it ran a projection for every pitcher who's starting all weekend. In terms of roto value, because it's like geared for season-long people a little bit, Kyle Hendricks is the most valuable pitcher of the entire weekend.
Wow. That's wild. Blender, are you with us?
I know. I agree completely. I think when people look at Kyle Hendricks, they see lack of strikeouts, right? Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't strike out anyone, but less strikeouts. You take a look at Woodruff, you take a look at Castillo, you take a look at Glasnow, Flaherty, Nola, Darvish, maybe not Max Fried, but I mean, still has probably a higher strikeout rate than Hendricks. The advantage in DFS scoring, strikeouts matter a lot because that's where the upside comes in, having a 10 strikeout game. Hendricks likely doesn't have a 10 strikeout game, but you have to realize, like I said before, none of these pitchers are going to be pitching like 110 pitches. You're not going to get a 120 pitch game out of these guys. So when the guy's a strikeout pitcher and is going to see 30 additional pitches, that's more likelihood of racking up more strikeouts. So now once we close that sample size, if we said that everyone's going to pitch 80 pitches, let's say, we just said on average 80, 85 pitches. Well, the difference between Glasnow and Hendricks, like Glasnow's likely not going to strike out 14 in 5 innings. If he went 7, he has more of a chance of getting more points. That upside part of that distribution curve. But if everyone's going to pitch 5 innings, the effect of the strikeouts isn't as dramatic. So to me, the Pirates have a 2.8 implied run total. They're playing in Wrigley in the cold and the wind. I mean, like, if the difference, if Kyle Hendricks gets 3 strikeouts and Glasnow and Woodruff get 6 or whatever, but I mean, 1 earned run that's it. Like all that'll wipe out that 2 strikeout advantage. So why not play the pitcher against the team with the lowest implied total and the best pitching conditions of the season? I mean, like, if we had this, you don't see this. We talk about, it's a great pitching matchup in the middle of July. We're talking about it's under 40 degrees and 20 mile an hour blowing in to a team that barely has any power anyway. So, like, to me, we have Hendricks as like the 5th, 6th highest owned pitcher, like in our projections, 14%. Like, to me, why shouldn't he be 30 or 40%?
I might be pairing him with Glasnow
on day 1.
So the thing is, Glasnow in Tampa just plays the game differently as well too. Like, he's got an incredible K rate, 36%, right below Cole as far as the slate. And the Marlins, there's definitely some Ks in that lineup as well too. Anderson, Duvall, Jazz Chisholm, who's I don't think he's ready for the majors just yet. 23.6% collectively, but also they're in the National League, and there's a chance he gets pinch hit for like in the 5th or 6th inning, and it's the Rays, and the Rays just play the game differently, and they value their bullpen more than others. And Glasnow, it's the appropriate name because that's how they treat him sometimes. And maybe he throws 85 pitches, but he also can strike out 10 in 5 and a third. Probably doesn't get that QS, probably doesn't get that quality start in FanDuel. We got to pick up the pace, Cardi, because we did a little like a, hey, welcome to the season kind of thing. And we want to have some questions from the chat as well, too. And of course, we got to make way for crunch time with Dave Potts. Cheese is good and Roth. But your thoughts as far as Glasnow, and then you can bring Cole and Bieber into the conversation as far as FanDuel. Darvish just throwing baseballs today. Jack Flaherty, Luis Castillo, I think is really interesting as well. Who do you want to focus on as far as pitchers next?
Yeah, personally, I'm not super on Glasnow. I would rather go up to Castillo or down to Woodruff. I like Glasnow as a pitcher. Like, the bat thinks he's amazing. The issue is the volume with him, especially this early in the year. If you look at what he did last year, he did not go over 90 pitches until his 6th start of the year. Like, that's what the Rays do with these guys. And so I have issues paying close to $9K for a guy who could get pulled really early. So I'd prefer Woodruff, or I'd prefer Luis Castillo, I think, paired with Hendricks on DraftKings. I think Woodruff is just really good, and I think Minnesota is going to scare people a little bit, but probably no Nelson Cruz in the National League, playing in Milwaukee here. Castillo against St. Louis. Like, I think this is an offense that is going to be a little overrated this year. Like, Nolan Arenado is probably not the guy people think he is. Goldie's getting older. Outside of them and maybe Paul DeYoung, like, they don't have a single above average hitter in their whole lineup. And so I think Castillo is interesting enough. I'd rather pay the extra $400 for him over Glasnow, given that I just expect him to go deeper into the game.
It's this weird thing. Luis Arraez, by the way, leading off there for Minnesota. You're right. No Nelly Cruz, no boomstick today. Arraez is one of those guys like, wow, that's their leadoff hitter. He's terrible. He's not very good, but he also doesn't strike out a lot, which is kind of annoying. 11.3% as far as his Ks, but no Cruz. you got Sano, plenty of Ks in Sano. Donaldson is just another year older, and you got that the pitcher hitting as well too. So yeah, Woodruff, which is weird. He's in that conversation. He took a big leap. He was awesome last year, and I think he's legit. Sounds like you think he's legit. Who else do you have in your pool there, Blender, as far as pitchers? Are you raking the barrel? Are you getting some of these cheapies? The Texas game with with Kansas City, is that something we're doing? Not a lot of Ks necessarily in that game, but they are cheap and they can help you spend up on some bats. Or is that not necessary today?
Yeah, but the problem is that it's not necessary. To me,
Yeah.
my favorite game on the slate on both sides for GPP is Kansas City, Texas. I think that's the highest variance game on the slate because we have Brad Keller, we got Kyle Gibson, not horrible pitchers, right? They shouldn't be priced this cheap. Keller should not be 5,900 and Gibson should not be 5,300. These guys should be at least 1,000 more. But look, if you look at the totals in a lot of these games, it's like I also like the prices on the Rangers and the Royals bats as well. And this game actually has, I mean, to say that 8.5 is a high total for baseball, for this slate it is. So to me, like if I'm going to play a cheap pitcher, I like Keller, I like Gibson. They do both project well, but also you're dealing with a new Kansas City lineup. I know Mondesi's not in the lineup,
Yeah.
So that the strikeout rate goes down because he strikes out like a million times. He either strikes out or puts up 74 fantasy points. He gets on base and steals 7 of them and hits 3 triples or whatever. I just think that both the pitchers, I think the Royals will be a little bit owned as a stack, but the pitchers are going to be under owned, and I can absolutely see Keller come out and throw 100 pitches in 6 innings and get 8 strikeouts. Now he could also walk 5 guys. I mean, but in the same thing for Kyle Gibson. I think these are decent pitchers that are underpriced, but they could get into trouble very easily. So these could be the guys, the pitcher could get 25 points or -10. And if they get -10, that means the stack went off. So like, I think I'm more likely to play the hitters in this game only because you don't need a 5K pitcher. I mean, like you could stack the Dodgers and the Padres and get 2 8K pitchers.
Not hard.
And it's not hard, right? So like I'm not going to leave 3,000 on the table for no apparent reason, but like, I just don't think it's necessary.
Keller's so weird, man. 220 innings in the last 2 seasons, 17% K rate, which is awful, obviously. His fly ball rate is 28%, which is incredible. And his homer on the fly ball rate is 9.1%, 0.7 homers per 9. Cardi, is there any other pitcher like that? It's just weird.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone. That is strange.
Yeah. But like, he's a terrible DFS guy. He's a king and he doesn't strike anybody out. And he's also not very good, but he doesn't give up homers. So I don't know how to pick him. By the way, we mentioned the Pirates are throwing baseballs against the Cubs too in that terrible weather. And nobody wants to play Chad Gould, but he's the cheapest pitcher on DraftKings. Like, maybe he's fine. Maybe he's okay. And some people will argue that Gould's like got good stuff and he's good. And I've heard people on that side of it hasn't quite shown it. We do have to move on, Cardi, but if you want to kind of summarize your take as far as pitchers today, we'll have Blender summarize as well.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Hendricks is just a lock. Great weather, probably the best pitching weather we'll see all year against a bad offense that is more strikeout prone than people realize, and he's way too cheap. I like Woodruff. I like Castillo. I think Glasnow's fine, but there are real concerns that cannot be overstated about how deep he's going to go into the game. And if you do want that cheap guy, which again, I don't know if it's necessary like Blender, I think Keller, I think Gibson, I think Alcantara even or Cool are fine.
I appreciate that you pronounce his name correctly. So many people cannot get that name right for Sandy. But Blender, give me a quick summary if you don't mind as far as the pitchers. And is there anybody you're just Xing out? Big names.
Madison Bumgarner.
Yeah, well, any name that matters. It's like worth.
And no, I mean, to me, I mean, if all these pitchers are only going to pitch at most 100 pitches, like they all look the same to me. I think the range of outcomes between half the pitchers on the slate are about the same. So the pitchers aren't going to make or break my lineup. I'm more likely this slate to be much more condensed on the stacks that I play than the pitchers. So I may have 8 of these pitchers in my pool and just whatever fits. and then really narrow down to like 3 or 4 stacks I want to play, and then just mix the pitchers in with there.
All right, chat, once again, what up? Like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Do appreciate that. Ask some questions. Cash game questions go to Cardi. Tournament questions will go to Blender. We'll be firing them off later on in the show. And be specific. Tell us what site you're on. Have broad questions. Blender would love you if you asked them a broad tournament question. Much more than, do I play DJ LeMahieu or should I play Stanton? I don't know how you can do, you know what I mean? Same idea, same concept. Fire off those questions. Devin's compiling them. He'll be firing them my way. All right, catchers. You can play catchers on FanDuel. You don't necessarily have to. FanDuel, by the way, multi-position eligibility. We'll have a conversation another day. We probably don't have time for it, but certainly a different way to play over there, which kind of makes things interesting. Catchers on DK, Cardi, for cash. Are we punting or are we spending up?
I think that's really the decision. For me, I'd rather spend up. Salary is not that much of a prohibitive thing on this slate where I have to go down to like, I think last I looked, Caratini is projected as the highest owned catcher.
Yeah.
Like he's fine. Like I like the Padres. I think Bumgarner is horrible. I've been saying that for a while, but we have Will Smith for 4.6K. He's not even 5K. He's a legitimately good hitter, not just like a good hitting catcher. He's a legitimately good hitter in cores for the highest team total of the game. The bat actually has it over 7 runs for the Dodgers. I don't see any reason why you can't get up to Will Smith. If you need to save, Caratini is obviously fine. And if you want to be different, there are guys you can do in your stacks. Clearly Will Smith is far and away the best catcher on the slate.
Question. Traditionally, isn't Austin Barnes Clayton Kershaw's personal caddy? He always catches his games. Is that not a thing anymore, or is this his opening day? So it's going to be Will Smith. Do we know who's catching officially? That lineup's not out just yet.
That's a good question. I don't know. We don't have the lineup yet, but that is something to monitor.
Yeah, I think there's a decent chance Austin Barnes draws to start, and everybody thinks, oh, Will Smith. Who knows? We'll see. But I'm kind of curious how it's going to go down. And I bet Austin Barnes is really cheap, but maybe he's not. And probably more of a guy you play on DK where you're forced to play a catcher as opposed to FanDuel. Give me some tournament pivots. What do we have, Blender, as far as some catchers? I assume it's just play the catcher in your stack. Is that the answer?
I mean, unless I'll always say this about catcher, especially on DraftKings, is that unless you're paying up for a premium catcher, which on this slate would be like a Sal Perez or Real Muto or Darno, like Contreras, like guys that aren't crappy, right? They could hit a home run by themselves and stuff. You should just throw in whoever's in your stack. So like, to me, if I have a Cincinnati stack, it'll have Tucker Barnhart in. I mean, like it's whatever it is. Because at the low end, these 2-3K catchers, I mean, they project so close to each other anyway that yeah. But most likely in cash games like Caratini, Smith, are gonna, like, if you're gonna use a one-off, if Will Smith bats 5th for the Dodgers, he's gonna be the most popular catcher one-off. And me personally, I don't like playing chalk catchers, especially when the catching position is like, so like I'm more likely to play a Perez or a Real Muto, and you're gonna look and you go, they're overpriced. It's like, well, if I'm not playing a Dodgers stack, like where am I putting my money? I mean, like I'm not leaving 4,000 on the table. So you don't have to be that price sensitive this slate, because there's a way to make anything happen. So yes, they're overpriced, but I think at single digit ownership, Perez, Real Muto, Contreras, even in the wind, because people aren't going to want to play the Cubs.
Nobody's playing 5K Contreras in that.
Right,
in that
exactly.
weather.
So why not?
All right, moving on. First base, Cardi, your cash first baseman today.
The guy that I like the most is CJ Cron. I know people are really going to want to load up on the Dodgers, and they're going to be a little more reluctant to play Rockies because it's Clayton Kershaw. And that's fair, but it's still Coors Field. And CJ Cron is a guy that I love, that the Bat X loves. Like for season-long purposes, the Bat X likes CJ Cron more than any other projection system in existence. Like it loves CJ Cron. His StatCast numbers have always been fantastic. He's never had especially good context playing in LA before they moved the fences in, playing in Tampa Bay, playing, with Detroit, not even really getting a real shot. But he's a legitimately good hitter. He projects for a 270 batting average this year and 31 home runs. He's in Coors Field with the platoon advantage, hitting in the middle of the lineup for 3.8K. Even though it's Kershaw, I have no problem taking the discount with Cron today. I think he's great. I think there's other guys you can go with. But Cron is a guy that I do really, really like.
Blender, give me the pivots and tournaments.
What would be the difference, Cardi? I mean, we have Josh Fuentes is going to bat second in the same situation for 400 less. Are we looking at Crone probably because Crone probably has, way more power than Fuentes? Because I'm looking like for cash games, Crone always scares me because I think he's a wide range of outcomes type of guy. Like he has power for a home run, but he could also give me 0 points. So do you have any concern with that when we could just pay up for like a Max Muncy or Carlos Santana even batting projected 4th against Gibson for the Royals at 3,600?
So, I mean, in GPP, you can play whoever you want. Someone once told me that. But in cash games, like I don't see Cron as that wide range of outcomes guy, especially as a Rocky. Because like I said, it's not like he's Rougned Odor or Joey Gallo where he's projecting for like a 210 batting average this year. He projects for a 270 batting average. That's 20 points above average. Coors Field reduces strikeouts. So I really don't think he's this like all or nothing guy. Even if earlier in his career, maybe he was. I think especially in this context, he's really not. And especially if we're comparing to Josh Fuentes, Fuentes is straight garbage. Like he is an awful, awful hitter. You know what his projected WOBA for this season is playing for the Colorado Rockies? It's 286. That's like what Jeff Mathis would project for as a Rocky. Like it's not good. So I'll pay the 400 and take Cron. I don't even care if we think there's more variance.
Blender, we got to pick up the pace because I promised that we'll get some of the chat's questions, and we can only stick around so long because we have crunch time coming up as well too. But did you have a first baseman or two, or you just basically whatever the first baseman?
Wait for the stack questions. I'll give out my vomit stacks and I'll let Cardi go through position by position.
We'll do that. We can do that makes sense. Sure, why not? Let's keep with the cash stuff and Cardi at second base. Well, actually, I think second base is kind of sort of somewhat interesting on DK because this is one of the potential salary savers, and I know I've seen you tweet about this guy, and I love this guy, and I'll play anybody for the right price. And the matchup against you, Darvish, is terrible, but Ketel Marte. The hate is he's 2.7K on DK. Like, what is going on? If that's like the cheapest guy on my team, and he makes everything else work, I'm playing Ketel Marte. Bad matchup, but he's still really good. I know Lux is cheap too, and he might bat 8th, which I hate with the pitcher behind him. Older conversation. What are you doing at second as far as your favorites? Dollar for dollar guys. Who's making things work for you?
Yeah, I mean, before the postponement, it was Marte or Kike Hernandez for me. And now that Kike's off the slate, like Marte is clearly the best point per dollar guy. I don't know what DraftKings is thinking. The whole Arizona team is priced way too low, but Marte in particular, like I know the BATX is really high on him, another guy that it likes more than every other system. But he's good. Like he had a down year last year, but his max exit velocity has been the same every single year. It was still like 97th percentile last year. Like this is a guy who can hit the ball hard, and he was hitting the ball hard all spring. Yeah, Darvish is good. I don't love picking on Darvish, but a really good hitter batting leadoff with the platoon advantage for 2.7K. And there's some sneaky stolen base potential because Darvish gives up a lot of steals. Like I think Marte's great. I think Rojas is a interesting pivot in GPPs, maybe. Like you mentioned, Lux, I think he's fine. Garrett Hampson on the other side of that Coors game is good. But really, Ketel Marte is clearly the best play here, I think.
Third base, is the decision Turner versus Machado, or are you going someplace else?
I mean, in cash, it's one of those two. I'll take the discount on Turner, I think. I might even like him more straight up. I think it's really funny that Nolan Arenado is priced like it's Coors Field. Like he costs more than the third baseman that's actually in Coors Field. That's a better hitter. That's crazy to me. Eduardo Escobar at 2.8K. I said like this whole Diamondbacks lineup is too cheap. Escobar for 2.8, probably hitting third. I think he's awesome. You can make a case for Fuentes, I guess, but like I really don't think he's a good hitter. But 3.4, he's fine. I prefer him at third to first. That's kind of, I think, where you're looking in cash games, though. It's Turner or Machado.
Shortstop. And again, I made a shell lineup before the show, and I have two really good pitchers. I have Hendricks and Glasnow in there. That may change. But yeah, I have one of Turner or Machado, and now I have one of Seager or Tatis. Which one should I play as far as Seager or Tatis in cash? I don't know. They're both
flip a coin, honestly. They project so closely. They're both great for obvious reasons. I think you want one of them in cash games. There are cheaper guys. Jorge Polanco at 3.3 is interesting. Owings at 2.8 is fine. Josh Rojas at 2.6 is fine. But I do think this is a spend up spot in cash.
You can save some salary in the outfield because there are again some mispricings on DK. Austin Meadows, love Austin Meadows. Contra, he's had his struggles versus lefties. I'm expecting a bounce back season for Meadows, where last year he was playing hurt. He had COVID issues. Going into the year, people were saying this guy's going to take another step, and he fell back hard. But 3.6K, Cardi, I think that's just a ridiculous. I know the ballpark's not great, but relative to the slate, the ballpark's actually not terrible. You consider everything else outside of Coors, obviously. Tommy Pham is 3.1K. Like, what up with that? That seems ridiculous. Yeah. So the outfield, what do we? This is a place to find good stuff for cheap. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like you have your high end options. You have your Mookie Betts and your Cody Bellingers, but I've always been a huge Meadows guy. I think he's too cheap here. Tommy Pham is a guy Blender kind of mentioned at the top of the show. Like, you have teams where the middle of the order hitters, they all project the way you expect them to. Like Tatis is 5.7K. And then all of a sudden you have Tommy Pham, who's going to have a good spot in the lineup, is a good hitter. He's 3.1K against Madison Bumgarner. Like,
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Just so underpriced. I think David Dahl is really interesting. I don't think a lot of people even realize he's with the Rangers now, but Blender mentioned them as like sneaky plays at the top of the show. He'll probably, I don't know if we have a lineup yet, but probably be leading off, I would assume. So I think he's really interesting at his price. Who are some other outfield guys?
Staying in that game, Cardi, I'll just say Joey Gallo is 3.6, which seems egregious. And on the other side, and DK always hates Jorge Soler. Why is Jorge Soler 2.8?
Yeah,
what is that?
Yeah, he's way too cheap. Soler is a great play. In that same Texas-Kansas City game, there's a lot of cheap guys there. Kyle Isbell is going to be a starter for them this year. It looks like he's 2.1. He's basically free. Brock Holt is 2.1 if he has a decent spot in the lineup. Like, there's a lot of cheap guys you can look at here.
All right. Do you have a favorite stack?
I mean, it's Dodgers and Padres, obviously, in a raw sense, but point per dollar, it's absolutely the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, but it's just like, well, what do you do with that? What do you do with that?
That's exactly it. Like, what are you gonna spend on? I guess is the problem, really.
Because you're getting Dodgers and Padres with good pitching already. But yeah, that's what everybody else is doing too. And that's a good segue to Blender. Blender, before we yield to the questions from the chat, favorite stacks today?
Okay, favorite does not mean who's going to do the best. It just means who's going to be underowned compared to their probability. So it does not mean you do not play Dodgers or Padres. I will be playing Dodgers and Padres, but unlikely to be playing as a 5-man stack. So I will have bets and I will have these guys in 3-mans and two in singles and whatever. So because you have to spend. I mean, what am I going to do? I mean, just leave 4,000 on the table. But I like the Texas-Kansas City game, both sides. It's weird for me to say, the Rays-Marlins game. I think the Rays, I know people are not, they're a vomit stack technically, even though, because the top 2 guys that are projected in their order, Tsutsugo and Meadows are too cheap. But I mean, like, Arozarena probably shouldn't be 5,300 and Wendell shouldn't be 4,900. So that stack is going to go like wildly underowned against Alcantara. And then if Glasnow is going to be one of the highest owned pitchers and his range of outcomes is a little bit wider than people think, maybe they go to the bullpen. We've seen Glasnow come out and walk 7 guys in 3 innings. So I love targeting pitchers that tend to have walk problems every once in a while. And no one's playing them. I mean, like, no one will play the Marlins. And if Glasnow is 40% owned and the Marlins put up 8 runs, like, it kills 40% of the lineup because, like, it's negatively correlated to that. So, like, to me, I am always looking to try to find a pitcher that's going to be owned to stack against. That's not like an ace, not Cole, not DeGrom. I know Glasnow's good, but I don't consider him in like that ace status yet. So I have no problem with that. And same thing for Cincinnati. I don't think people are going to attack Jack Flaherty.
No.
And Cincinnati is priced up enough that no one's going to play him because the stack, you could play the Padres for virtually the same amount of money. So, like, I'm trying to target these teams where they have like 1 or 2 guys that are cheap enough. So I'm not paying I'm not paying the Dodgers stack, but still expensive enough where, like, you could spend all the money you want. I mean, like the salary cap is you don't need to. So more people that I just have the feeling that the Dodgers and the Padres are going to be way higher owned than even what our current projection or what our Jamino's ownership projections are, because like I'm running lineup HQ and it's like it doesn't stop jamming in Dodgers and Padres because you have the money and no matter what you do.
So why not pick on Darvish? Like, because he's a similar quality pitcher to Glass now. The Diamondbacks project a little bit more just because they're too cheap.
No, because he's not owned enough. It's a leverage thing, Cardi. It's not like if Darvish was 40% owned, I'd be jamming in Diamondbacks all you can. It's the fact that Glasnow is going to be 35 to 40. Like if Darvish was like we haven't projected as 13% owned. It's
Earlier
like,
today,
right,
yeah,
like, but I'm just
today,
not getting the
saw him
negative
up for 30.
correlation with all the other lineups in the contest. So it's like it's less appealing to me.
Lightning round
I thought
questions.
30% owned.
Questions in the chat. Lightning round. This is very, very specific. This is for you, Blender. How do you feel about a 3-2-2-1 San Diego Dodger KC Tampa GPP? Is this a troll question, or I mean, like you're fine with that concept, or are you like a 4-4 guy? How do you feel as far as builds when it comes to stacks?
On DraftKings on a slate this size, I will never make a lineup that isn't 5-man. So like
interesting.
And on FanDuel, I'll never make anything on this side. If you're playing a 3-game slate, yeah, then obviously it could get different by not correlating. But yeah, on FanDuel, it's 4-4 or 4-3-1, and on DraftKings it's 5x. Whether it's 5-3 or 5-1-1 or doesn't matter. But it's just 9-game slate 5. It's always going to be 5. Never 3-2-2. If that wins, great. It's plus EV. Not enough people stack still 5-man. You should just constantly run out these 5-man stack lineups.
CJ Crone, third highest projected first baseman in DK versus Kershaw. Is that right? I think that's right. Yeah, he's cheap enough, and it kind of sort of makes sense. I know nobody really wants to pick on Kershaw, but he is cheap. He's got power. It's Coors Field. And I mean, that curveball doesn't curve as much in Coors either, for what it's worth. Cardi, are any of these starting pitchers going to go longer than 5? Yeah. Be cautious.
Yeah, the bat has a lot of them going longer than 5. Very, very few going over 6, though.
Another question. Martin's asking us about Glasnow and the potential of him getting pulled after 4, and maybe if he's at like 83 pitches, it's the top of the 5th, and he's batting. He's probably not batting.
He's getting pulled, yeah.
But he might have 9 Ks in the bank, maybe. So all right. Same question, Cardi. Should we worry about American League pitchers pitching or in National League ballparks, just the pinch hits in general, and a little bit.
Yeah, the effect isn't as large as some people like seem to think it is. Like, it's there, and obviously the variance on it is huge. A guy can get pinch hit for it any time, but on average, a guy loses maybe 2.5 pitches, in that situation.
Cardi, FanDuel, we didn't really touch on as far as their pitchers. Bieber versus Castillo. Who do you prefer? The Biebs.
Yeah, if salary is not a thing, like I'll go Bieber. I don't know what the salary is over there. Let me look.
Bieber, I believe, is 11.5, so you're getting a discount off of Castillo, and Cole is 11K for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, I like Bieber. I know the bat really likes Bieber. I probably would just take the discount.
Hey, how do you feel about the Blue Jays? I know we didn't talk about it much. Again, that's on the FanDuel slate. Against Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole, when he's not striking people out, he does give up fly balls. He can give up homers. Again, bad weather too. But do you like the Blue Jays as a sneaky stack? Anybody?
I mean, I know the bat likes the Blue Jays quite a bit more than Vegas does. The Blue Jays offense this year is just going to be good. It's going to be so good.
No Springer.
But I don't know if that's no Springers. That won't help. But I don't know if that's getting too cute. But I don't hate it. It's because they'll be like no owned, especially if Cole is high owned. Then
stud pitchers don't get blown up. Like I think large field GPPs. Like I have to think in terms of, will this pitcher give up 10 runs in 4 innings? And like the guys like Cole and Bieber and DeGrom, like when they get hit up, like it's like 5 runs in 5 innings, and it's like, is that going to win me a GPP? Like no. So I'm like, if I have the choice, I'm going to attack Chad Cole, or I'd rather attack Chad Cole in a game where the wind is blowing in than attack, a Cy Young eligible type. It just, I need 12 runs. I need that much production, and just, yeah, he'll give up 3 home runs, solo shots. And it's like, so does the stack win? No, it still doesn't win.
Blender, are you on board with Gallo as a one-off versus Keller?
Yeah, why wouldn't I? He could hit a home run. There you go. Done.
Give me this really quickly. We're up against the clock again. Crunch time's coming up. Kevin Ross going to give you the most update as far as weather. And if you guys got Dave Potts, cheese is good, the best in the business, 2-time millionaire winner, answering your questions, breaking down the slate right behind us. So stick with us, hit the like button, do subscribe. We do appreciate that. Crunch time is free. Normally it's not. You got to get RG Premium. How do you do that? Get yourself 10% off the first month. Links in chat. Really quickly, Blender, if you can just tell me the mix of lineup order that you should prioritize amongst hitters. I know it's not a quick answer, but if you can give me like the 30-second version of that.
Well, I don't even understand the question.
Like, how do I pick the 1, 2, 3, 4? Do I pick the 6, 7, 8, the 9?
I care more. Obviously, the guys at the top of the order have higher plate appearance expectation. I care more about the positions that they fill than the lineup order. I don't mind the gaps. So, like, if I take a look at, for instance, I'm just going to pull up the Royals just as the expected order is like, you have an outfield / second baseman, then you got outfield, first base, catcher, third baseman, outfielder. It's like, do I want to play 3 outfielders? Like, I like Merrifield because he fills a second base spot. Perez fills a catcher spot. So I'm looking more at the positions that I could fill, because, like, if I want to play a Dodger one-off and I want to play Betts or Bellinger or something, I need an outfield spot, or Muncy in a first base spot. So I try to look for, like, I don't need to have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't need to have 2, 3, 4, 5. They could be a gap. I could play Nicky Lopez at second base if he fits, if I needed to.
He's terrible.
I know he's terrible, but I'm using the correlation so people will be on base and whatever. So, like, to me, don't overthink, like, well, what the spots in the order. Think more in terms of, how do I fill the right positions in my lineup that could then fit the jigsaw puzzle in with your other stack and the pitchers that you want to play.
What time are you on tomorrow, Blender?
11 a.m. Eastern.
All right, check out Blender breaking down the slate. Looking ahead. You look back as well, and you look ahead as far as the slate going down. Basketball's on later tonight. Crunch time is on behind us. Do hit the like button, subscribe, turn on notifications. Appreciate you guys interacting with us in chat. I apologize if I did not get your question. We were just very excited and very happy today as far as opening day. Check out the bat from Derek Carty. That was Blender. That was Carty. I was Dean. This was baseball. It's exciting. Opening day. Let's get it. Stay tuned for Crunch Time. We're out of here. Ho!
Back in the fantasy bar. Opening day is here, and I am back to get your MLB season started off with 6 of my favorite plays across both FanDuel and DraftKings. We'll find some value, what teams we're stacking, my favorite pitcher of the day in the mid-range, and of course, my favorite play of the day. Who is it? Belly up to the fantasy bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Opening day edition, Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Good to be back here for another season of MLB baseball. Will be coming to you a couple times a week, providing you 6 of my favorite plays across both FanDuel and DraftKings. Thank you, as always, for stopping in. If you are new here to the Fantasy Bar, we want to welcome you as well. Been doing these videos for a lot of years now. Excited to be doing them here once again, especially opening day. Nothing better than when you get every single team on the docket, and we've broken it down to my favorite 6 plays. So before we get into that, guys, couple things. First of all, click that thumbs up button. Let's see how many we can get on the video. That's the tip jar here in the bar. Absolutely free to watch the video. All I ask you, click that thumbs up button and do us a favor there. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Get notified when these videos are coming out. Like I said, we're going to do them a couple times a week, but they'll be different days. So make sure you are in the know. Hit that subscribe button. Lastly, guys, make sure you head over and check out scoresandodds.com/beer. The link is in the description right below the video, and just tons of information for making the smart bets, whether it's baseball, NBA, golf, tons and tons of information there, analytic-based picks, all the betting splits you're going to need to know, comparisons between the different books to find you the best betting lines on the spreads, on the totals, player props, everything you need, guys. Don't miss out on these special offers, every single sport included there. We're not just going to give you baseball. We're going to give you everything, and you can pay by the week, by the month, or the best offer by the year. Go get signed up today. I promise you, you're going to love what you see over at scoresandodds.com/beer. All right, a little bit more housekeeping, then we'll get into the plays. First of all, baseball. We've made it a rule here in the fantasy bar. No Coors Field. Too easy. You don't need me telling you to play guys from Coors Field. So, of course, you want the Dodgers here. You want some Rockies exposure against Clayton Kershaw. No problems with it, but you don't need me telling you to play Coors Field. You guys already know that. Pitching. We've seen a big dynamic shift in pitching with a lot more bullpen usage from a lot of these teams. So we're going to try to include that in our plays and try to find some of these weaker bullpens we can pick on as well, along with some of the starting pitchers we want to identify as targets. Lastly, guys, can't wait to get MLB season started. Let's get into it here with our first pick, a multi-positional pick, which FanDuel has added this year. I think it'll add a nice dynamic to their game. Let's start with second baseman, outfielder, Ian Happ of the Cubs. So like we talked about, we not only want to pick on starting pitchers I think are vulnerable, and that's certainly Chad Kuhl against left-handed hitters. We want to pick on those bullpens as well that we should see for 4, 5, sometimes up to 6 or 7 innings in a game. In Pittsburgh, projected to be one of the worst bullpens in the league according to Fangraphs. So this is definitely a great spot for this Cubs lineup, especially Happ against a guy like Chad Kuhl. We'll take a look at his stats here in a minute, but he has certainly struggled with lefties, and that's not going to be a great thing against this Cubs lineup. Not only in Happ, Anthony Rizzo, Jock Peterson, there's some huge power in this Cubs lineup, but Happ right there at the top of the list. ISO over 300 is a very massive number. If you're not sure what ISO is, a measure of power basically is the easiest way to describe it. 318, certainly a big number there for Ian Happ. Weighted OBA up to 381 against righties in 2019, and even in 2020, the shortened season still put a 300 ISO on the board. Woba was there at 385, so very consistent year over year has been Ian Happ. Now Chad Kuhl, we mentioned, very much struggles with left-handed hitters. 39.7% hard contact rate, 361 career Woba allowed, and almost a 40% hard contact rate over the course of his career. So the guy missed 2019, pitched a little bit in 2020, but this is a great spot for the Cubs. Great spot for Ian Happ, especially at just 3,000 on FanDuel, and you can slide him into that second base spot. Sign me up for that all day, leading us off here in the six-pack. All right, let's go to the outfield. More value for you, especially over on FanDuel with Will Myers of the Padres. Now, the Padres certainly going to be a team a lot of people look to here today. Obviously, a very good matchup, but I think the headliner is going to be Fernando Tatis Jr. and Manny Machado. So, Will Myers, a guy that may be forgotten about a little bit, especially at that $4,700 price point on DraftKings. So you have a weird dynamic here where I like paying more than most people want to pay. It's a way to get contrarian there. And FanDuel, $2,900, just too tough to ignore that price here in this spot. So let's take a look at the numbers for Will Myers. We'll go all the way back to the start of 2019 and include 2020. We're talking about a Woba at almost 400 for him over that span. And ISO sitting at 300, so a ton of power here for Will Myers as well, and a nice 149 WRC plus. All those numbers against left-handed pitching with Madison Bumgarner taking the hill for Arizona. We know this guy long away from his days as an ace on the Giants staff, and this guy absolutely gives up a ton of home runs. 26 home runs allowed in 2019, a Woba over 400 in 2020, and 3.3 home runs per 9 in that season. 6.74 xFIP in 2020, and the hard contact has been consistently over 45% in both 2019 and 2020. This is not the lineup you want to be allowing hard contact to. So yes, Machado, Tatis, if you can afford them, fantastic plays, but I love saving some money here and saving some ownership with Will Myers to tee off against Madison Bumgarner. All right, let's get you even more value. Another slugger I think is underpriced. That's Carlos Santana at first base. Now, a lot of people ready to write Carlos Santana off. You know, it's not the same guy we get when he was with the Indians, but I don't want to look at last season and write him off. Yes, he slid under the Mendoza line in the batting average, but I think there's still a lot of potential here with Carlos Santana. If we go back to just 2019, we're not going back a decade, just a couple seasons. We're talking about a guy that hit 23 home runs with a 366 Woba against right-handed pitching. So we're not that far off. And yes, this is a team in Kansas City, not super excited about this season, and not a team we're going to target a ton here. But in this spot against Kyle Gibson, I think this could be a profitable spot at these prices. 29% home run to fly ball rate. We know Gibson hits a ton of ground balls, but when the ball does go in the air, he's allowing it to leave the yard. 2.2 home runs per 9, 2 left-handed hitters in 2020. So yes, ground ball pitchers generally want to stay away from here, but I like the prospects for Carlos Santana in this matchup. Really like the price here, especially on FanDuel at just 2,800. All right, let's take a look at my favorite starting pitcher on the slate. A ton of studs, that would be too easy. Let's go to the mid-range here, and a guy I think is a bona fide stud at a discounted price, Luis Castillo of the Reds. So what I really like about Castillo, strikeouts, the name of the game here, always gives you massive upside in any given matchup. And even this matchup here, if we dive in to the career numbers against this Cardinals team, we're talking about a strikeout rate over 30% against these hitters, a batting average under 250. So he's done pretty well against a lot of these hitters, and I get it. There's some dangerous bats in this lineup. Guys like Paul Goldschmidt, the newly acquired Nolan Arenado. This is not an easy matchup here for Luis Castillo, but that's part of the reason I really like him. Is I think people will shy away and tend to go to more of those studs that have an easier matchup or guys in better spots. You know, that's going to save us here. And I think we get Castillo at a nice low ownership number, and we know he has the upside to compete with any pitcher on this slate. Anytime he toes the slab, he gives you that level of upside. So I think this matchup a little bit underrated here. Maybe it takes the Cardinals some time to find their spots, but good history against St. Louis here. And then Castillo goes double-digit strikeouts here. We're going to go big. Love the prices, love the spot. Get him in those opening day lineups on both FanDuel and DraftKings. All right, let's get back to the hitters here. A youngster I think is in for a breakout season at first base, third base, Alex Bohm of the Phillies. So you talk about a guy that came in and made an instant impact. Talking about a guy that finished second in NL Rookie of the Year voting, but led all NL rookies in average hits, RBIs in that shortened 2020 season. Also hit lefties very well to start out his career. Wobo over 360 and an ISO approaching 250. So we get nice power out of him as well. And Max Fried, not normally a guy I want to pick on. You know, it's been pretty good over the course of his short career. Continues to get better each and every year. But does show some vulnerabilities to right-handed hitters with power. 17 home runs allowed in 2019, a hard contact rate at almost 40%. So yes, a good pitcher here, but this Phillies lineup, I expect Philadelphia to be much improved this season, and I expect Bohm to have a massive year, continue building on that short rookie campaign, and really put some big numbers on the board, not only this season, but for us as well. 2,900 on FanDuel is a steal, 3,100 on DraftKings. In my opinion, the best value on the board over there. Lock him in those lineups here on opening day. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play for opening day. But before we do that, we're going to continue it. And if you're new, what do we...
What is up, everybody? Welcome to not just Crunch Time, but a very special MLB opening day pre-noon where I am, Crunch Time. This is exciting. We've got every single team that, well, I guess was scheduled to play. We've lost a few games here, but what is more exciting than that is my co-host, and that is Mr. Dave Potts, aka Cheese is Good. What's up, man?
Well, welcome back to you. You've probably been here the whole time, but
I didn't go anywhere.
I don't know.
I've literally never left all year round. I'm right here.
Yeah. I watched NBA Crunch Time like 3 times. It was silly every time. You did great and everything, but I mean, baseball. Yeah. Now we're talking.
It is. We are talking. For those who are not aware, this is also a free show. So there are some folks out there on the YouTube who might not know who Cheese is Good is. And you are the man who decided $1 million win was not enough for you. You went out, you did it twice.
Yeah, I didn't understand they were going to make me pay like half of it to the uncle. So I was like, I guess if I want $1 million, you got to do that twice. That's the only way that works.
Yeah. So if you don't know, Cheese is a legend across DFS. By the way, here you've been crushing it in esports and hockey and all sorts of randomness, but especially your specialty is baseball.
baseball, I actually have some idea what I'm talking about. Esports have been pretty fantastic. We'll talk about that another time. But I mean, I don't understand. I don't even know what the games are. But whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, but you're crushing in it. All right. Well, what I do here for those of you who are new, I handle the weather breakdown. We already lost a game due to rain. It is absolutely not going to rain in Boston enough for a postponement, but it's really ugly weather. And I assume they just thought people weren't going to come out and that they weren't going to make, enough money on opening day. So we lost that game. And then we lost the Washington game. That was COVID related, not weather related. So already 2 postponements out, one in Boston, one in Washington. As far as other weather goes, a quick list of spots I like and don't like. Obviously, Colorado, the elevation, it's great. Southern California games, San Diego and LA, it's nice and warm, good hitting weather there. And then games I really, really don't like. There's cold games with winds. Cold games where the winds are helping, Detroit, Cincy, New York. That's not very good. Cold games where the wind is hurting is even worse. That would be Philly and Chicago. Those would be bottom of the barrel for hitters and the best spots for pitchers. That is if weather was the only factor. And Cheese, you and I know weather is not the only factor. You will give us literally every other factor.
Every other factor, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the weather actually plays in huge to the whole slate. And before we even go into players, I think let me kind of big picture the slate.
Yep. Yeah, I love it.
Which is tagging on to what you just said. If every game today were in the same stadium with the same weather, the Dodgers and the Padres would be the obvious best teams, the obvious chalk. Now you throw in those happen to be the only 2 games on the main slate in good weather.
Yeah.
There are plenty of reasons to fade these teams in tournaments based on ownership, based on salary, but you're being goofy if you're trying to convince yourself that they're not the best 2 teams. Don't be trying to get that galaxy brain ooh, maybe the Dodgers aren't a good play. No, the Dodgers and the Padres are the best teams in the best spots. They project for the most points any way you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's opening day. We haven't seen these pitchers or these hitters in a really long time. Some of these pitchers are going to be off their game. Some are going to be on. We really don't know until we see it. So personally, I am spreading out way more than I do once we get in midseason. I have at least 1 stack of every single team on this slate. I have a couple of Pirate stacks. I expect them to score maybe 1 run on 5 singles. I don't expect them to do good, but we're going to see some wonkiness that we just can't project. But essentially, if you just want what's most likely to be the best play, it's the Dodgers and the Padres, and it's really not even close at all.
Okay. I do want to get into your individual plays. We'll go position by position. We'll talk cash. We'll talk tournaments. But also, I thought it would be a good time to maybe show off some tools that maybe everyone's familiar with. And then also, there's some new tools that you are super excited about this year. Would now be a good time to dive into that?
So I'll go more. We can do more of it after lock if people have questions. But the thing I wanted to point out that we have this year on Lineup HQ, this little OIS. I've been wanting this for years, and this is going to be huge if you're doing a bunch of lineups using the lineup builder. If you've got a player that you don't want to completely X out of the player pool, let's say you're going to stack, a few stacks of the Braves, but you don't ever want to play Acuna as a one-off ahead of Betts or Bellinger. If you click this only in stacks box, the only time you're going to get Acuna is when you are stacking the Braves. So he won't be used as an individual player. This is way more useful for the cheap players. Like if you've got cheap catchers and you say I don't ever want Tucker Barnhart just as one guy, but if I have 3 other Cincinnati Reds, sure, I would use Barnhart. You only in stacks him, and then you don't have to worry about getting him in a lineup where he's the only red. This is fantastic.
Just seems amazing. You said you've been asking for this for years, and it is here, and it's like Christmas for you.
It is the best thing. So absolutely wonderful, and you know what it is really is glorious.
It's glorious. It's a glorious day, except if you're in one of these ballparks in the Midwest or Northeast where it's a terrible day. Okay, one other thing I should note real quick is that in Cincinnati, that's the next. If there's going to be any games that have any issues, it would be Cincinnati, just because it's wet, it's cold, it's windy. I'm not talking rain heavy enough to stop play. Like if they decide they're playing this game, it's nothing but brief, maybe patchy drizzle. But that would be the game where if it's going to postpone, it would be ahead of time. That would be the one. If we don't hear anything and we're already kind of getting to that point where they know what's coming, I assume it's going to be fine. But that would be my only concern. With that all out of the way, let's dive into this slate and let's talk about what you want to do, how you want to attack it.
All right. Well, let's talk pitcher. Essentially, the slates are wildly different between FanDuel and DraftKings because FanDuel has the Indians game and the Yankees game, which means it has Bieber and Cole, there's a lot of great pitchers, but these two are like tier of their own. So if you're playing on FanDuel and you've got money, you really want Bieber against the Tigers. And in some tournaments, you want Cole, even though he's against a tougher team. They are a step above all these other pitchers. On DraftKings and the rest of FanDuel, if you don't have over $11,000, you've basically got, to me, 9 pitchers that are more or less a tie. They're all aces, but they're not quite, the 2 of the 3 best pitchers in the league, but they're like pitchers 4 through 15. Like these are all absolute superstars.
And is that why you're more spread out?
Yeah. So basically we're looking at, we'll look at the list here. Castillo, Darvish, Nola, Glasnow, Hendricks, Woodruff, Flaherty, Maeda. Maybe Kershaw in Coors Field, he's certainly playable. All of these guys are more or less the same based on upside, and we're guessing with all of them on pitch count. Are they midseason form? Are they going to go 5 innings or 6 innings? Someone's going to be off their game, and you're not going to know it until you see it. And someone's going to have the 10 strikeout game. I'm spreading these guys out way more than I would midseason when we've seen how they're pitching. The way I break them down on DraftKings first, because of where the salaries are, I don't think you need Darvish and Nola unless you just happen to have the money. And Darvish is my preferred. I think the sweet spot is 8,000 or 77 with Hendricks up to 92 with Castillo. Hendricks, Woodruff, Glasnow, and Castillo. Those are my 4 favorites, followed closely by Flaherty and Maeda. And then if you got money, up to Darvish or maybe Nola. They're all great. Mix them and match them. I mean, really, like I would not go all in on one of these guys if you're building multiple lineups.
Okay. Is there options lower, or you're literally just saying this is the range I like, I'm getting 2 of these guys?
No, there's actually options lower because even the bad pitchers, these are still these teams number 1. They're not terrible. Like Kyle Gibson at 5,300 versus Brad Keller. That's one of those games. It's kind of weak pitchers, but it's kind of weak offenses. I think it's totally fine to go down to a $5,300 Gibson if you want to load up on offense. I really even think you can play, like I didn't completely X Chad Kuhl out of the lineup builder because that's the weather game. That's the Wrigley game. He doesn't have to be very good to get 5 innings with no runs. Like, it really doesn't have to be very good. And then, the kind of random left out areas, Alcantara and Max Fried, they're kind of no man's land, but they're both very respectable pitchers. So I think if you end up in a spot where you got one of those lineups, you just can't quite get up to Hendricks and Woodruff, and you need that couple $100, those guys are fine. Like all these are good pitchers. But where possible, you want 2 of these guys from Maeda up to Castillo.
Okay. And then sure, take it away.
Yeah.
Go for
So FanDuel, like I said, Bieber and Cole, if you got money, that's who you want. Personally, I think you just want Bieber first because he's facing Detroit. And then it's the same bunch of the rest of these pitchers, but the pricing's a little different where Glasnow is priced up. Nola's priced down a little bit. So if you're playing both sites and you want some Aaron Nola, use him on FanDuel. And then basically Woodruff, Castillo, and Flaherty they're like almost the exact same price. They're within a couple $100. I have a slight lean to Castillo, but I mean, Woodruff's right there. Flaherty's right there. As far as the cheap stuff, I will just be the person who tells you guys that I am playing Matt Boyd. I don't expect any of you to play Matt Boyd. I expect a lot of you to stack against Matt Boyd. I am playing Matt Boyd.
Why?
Well, that's one of those weather games. He's a fly ball pitcher that can strike people out. If the balls are not flying out of the park, he's just a good pitcher. Like he can get the same amount of strikeouts as any of the good pitchers. And if the cold weather knocks the fly balls down, then he's good.
Okay.
You could also do, excuse me, I'm just hitting buttons here. You could also do Gibson and Keller here on FanDuel for the cheap guys.
Okay. Anything else pitcher wise, or shall we move it along to some hitters?
Let's move it along. I'm going to flip back to DraftKings for hitters, and we'll kind of go back and forth.
Yeah. All right. We'll start at catcher, and then we'll work our way around the horn through the outfield, and we'll talk about some stacks, and we'll take some questions when we're done with all the positionals.
Yep. So catcher is bad in the sense that all the good catchers, other than Will Smith, are in the tough game. So the Dodgers, Will Smith is the obvious best catcher for the price. If you can get him, that's who you want. I mean, almost every day is a play the catcher in your stack day, but especially today, unless you're talking Will Smith, I think you play the guy in your stack. Victor Caratini, assuming he's in the lineup for San Diego, he would be kind of the obvious cheap guy. If you're doing sort of a cash game type build, that would be your go-to cheap guy. Otherwise, like the Contreras, Real Muto, Darno, like these are really good catchers, but they're priced up and they're in these bad weather games that, against good pitchers. So I really don't love it.
Okay.
And
That's it. We move on.
You pretty much don't need a catcher on FanDuel. And just like I'm playing Matt Boyd, I am playing Gary Sanchez. Like some of these players who are terrible aren't actually terrible. They're just very boom or bust. And I'm fine with the bust. So I do have a little Gary Sanchez on FanDuel.
Okay, excellent. I already saw some Gary Sanchez questions, so that is addressed. Let's move it over to first base.
Okay, first base. I got to fix my scroll wheel. Look how fast it's going. Whooshoo. We do have some cheap guys, notably on DraftKings. Carlos Santana, I like a good bit. The expensive guys, I am playing some Braves. I think I kind of wish that were good weather. Aaron Nola's great at pitching, but to me, a guy like Freddie Freeman, when no one's going to play him, is just fantastic. And even Hoskins on the other side, I like a pretty good bit. On FanDuel, one thing I want to mention, I did like the Cubs a lot because of prices. Like Rizzo's 3,300. I think on my first run, I put him as a core play on FanDuel. But then when we see that weather with the wind blowing in, I don't really care for any of the Cubs unless you do a stack here or there. But I would rather not be using those guys, even on FanDuel where they're cheap. But first base is not actually a great position. I'll mention CJ Cron. People are going to be talking about him this year. He's in Colorado now, and he's another guy that even against Kershaw, he can hit home run anytime. So he's an interesting play.
Okay. Second?
Second base, I love not scrolling this fast. I love Brandon. What's his last name? Lowe, Kevin?
See, it's Nate Lowe and Brandon Lau.
You know what's going on. Happy baseball. So I love Brandon of the Lau family. DraftKings has this thing that everyone's probably aware of by now, where they price the Diamondbacks as if they're facing like the best pitcher of all time. And honestly, they might be. They're facing Yu Darvish, who is fan-freaking-tastic.
Yeah.
But like Ketel Marte is 2,700. You see the same like David Peralta and all these guys they're basically absolutely free. And because we lost that Boston game, which had some of the best values, these Arizona values are actually kind of necessary in certain lineups. This is DraftKings only. On FanDuel, you can get like Gavin Lux is $3,000 on FanDuel. I think another thing to note about FanDuel, they've added multi-position eligibility this year, which in the past was just one guy, one position. So someone like Mike Moustakas, who last year you just could play at third base, you can play him at second on FanDuel as well. So that's made FanDuel a little bit more fun to build for me. I'm a fan.
Okay, you are a fan of the duel. So it seems to me like you haven't played a single guy that you really love yet, right? We're kind of just saving money and picking the worst of the better of two evils.
Yeah, like my favorite hitter of first and second base is Brandon Lau.
Okay. All right, well, let's get to the stuff that I imagine you do really like, so we'll keep this rolling here.
So, okay, third base and shortstop. we ran into this last year. It was different players, but like it's Machado and Tatis for San Diego, just superstars, righties against Bumgarner. Like these are guys you want. And then for the Dodgers, you got Turner, you got Corey Seager. To me, like Seager and Tatis are probably the two best plays on the slate. They're both shortstops. When you go back to third, the gap between Turner and Machado is a little too big on DraftKings, so I like Turner. On FanDuel, I like Machado, where he's only 4K. Again, these are obvious plays. The Dodgers and Padres, you're not sneaking this by anybody, but these are the guys I want. Cheaper-ish stuff is okay today at third. It's kind of like what we saw at first. The good hitters are facing good pitchers in questionable weather. So guys like Chris Bryant and Nolan Arenado and Suarez and Moustakas, sure. Mostly, I think you're just playing them in stacks because I don't think you want to really hunt for home runs in these super cold weather games against good pitchers. Hunter Dozier interests me. Like that Kansas City Texas game is just random. Something weird's going to happen on one side or the other. I do like the Royals bats. Alec Bohm is pretty cheap on both sites. If you do want to fish for a home run, that's a guy I would go fishing with. He's got his own boat, so this is why I don't. Yeah, you don't have to bring any. He's got like a cooler, everything. Another cheap guy, Josh Fuentes, 3,400 on DraftKings. I think he's even cheaper on FanDuel. He's in Coors Field. Yeah, he's against Kershaw, but I mean, it's not like the Rockies are going to get shut out probably in Coors Field. But yes, ideally Machado, Turner.
Okay, then we'll go to shortstop, and you kind of half covered this a bit, but dive into it anyway.
Yeah, so Tatis and Seager, they're so good. Like Corey Seager,
got to have one.
Yeah, like to me, Corey Seager is probably gonna win the MVP this year. Like he's just so good. If he even keeps up most of kind of the step he took up last year, I think he's even better than Tatis. But whoop-de-doo, these guys are fantastic. Like play one of them if at all possible. We do have salary savers if you need them, and certainly in stacks. This is a good place to stop and bring up this Twins Brewers game. It's one of the only two indoor games, so you don't have to worry about the weather. These are both good pitchers. It's Woodruff, Maeda. In my first run through when I wrote the article, like on Monday, I just wasn't even looking at this game. Like, why bother with this game? I'd rather just play the Cubs or the Indians on FanDuel. As we're getting these tough weather games, I'm back on these offenses. Like they're both good offenses too, even though they're good pitchers. And you got the indoor; it's a pretty good place for hitting on this slate. So, I mean, I don't like Polanco in particular per se, but I do have some Twins and Brewer stacks that I wouldn't have had earlier in the week.
Okay.
With any of these really cheap shortstops, like Josh Rojas is going to be leading off today. He's another one of these just weirdly cheap Diamondbacks. Again, you should kind of expect a zero. He's facing Yu Darvish, but these guys are free on DraftKings. Let me just flip over to FanDuel for the FanDuel people. I forgot to mention Jose Ramirez at third base. You're playing FanDuel. And the other FanDuel thing to mention that we can do at shortstop with Torres and Bichette. You can definitely play some Yankees. Or if you are going to fish for a home run, maybe with one of these Blue Jays power bats against Cole. It's not a good weather day for hitting, but I do have plenty of Yankees on FanDuel. And again, we throw back to third base, Jose Ramirez on FanDuel.
Okay, excellent. Let's go out to the outfield. I always find this interesting because it's generally the best bats, but also sometimes some of the best value. So where are we landing here on DK?
Yeah, so we do have absolutely some of the best value. It was way better with that Boston-Baltimore game. But even now, so I think the obvious value, I tagged him, is Tommy Pham. He's $3,000 or 31 on DraftKings. It's just silly that that's just like a mistake. And even at 3K on FanDuel, I think you just play him. Mm-hmm. After we lost the Boston game, I tagged Austin Meadows. instead of JD Martinez. 3,600 on DraftKings to me is just too cheap. So we've also got Will Myers in the Padres outfield. Like you can fit Pham and Myers, especially, and like on FanDuel, you can just fit them with anything you want, whether you're full stacking the Padres or not. Like they're just too cheap. The expensive stuff is mainly the Dodgers, Betts and Bellinger. Like if you got money, by all means, play them. But I can't stop looking at the Braves. They're facing Aaron Nola, who's great. It's kind of cold, so whoop-de-doo. Like this is going to be the lowest we will ever see Acuna and Ozuna like all year, period. So if you're multi-entering, you're doing big field tournaments, I think you have to play some Braves. That's my take on it. But again, let's not pretend like Betts and Bellinger aren't the best plays. That's the best plays. The mid-tier is kind of blah to me. Like all these this is DraftKings, these upper 4K guys, they're kind of overpriced other than Myers. Like Starling Marte, Ian Happ I liked a lot before the weather. Like guys like Benintendi, Winker, McCutchen, this 4K range, these are the perfect players in your stacks, but they're not really likely to hit for power, especially today. I would rather play Kepler, going back to that Minnesota game, and then the Texas-Kansas City game I really like for the outfielder, Gallo and Jorge Soler. Soler is super cheap on DraftKings. Gallo's pretty cheap right there with Meadows. So I can easily make the case if you're not playing the Dodgers to not spend up at outfield at all and go like under 4K on DraftKings.
Okay. Getting a bunch of questions, but first let's talk about some stacks because a lot of these questions have to do with stacks. I'm getting the feeling here that you are pretty heavy on the Braves. Maybe you don't even want to be, but you just find yourself there.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say pretty heavy. Like they're expensive enough that you have to really kind of go out of your way to play them. Like when I just ran the lineup builder, even asking for them, like I wasn't getting in because they really don't rank well.
Right.
But yes, I did go out of my way to make sure I had some.
Okay, so what are your favorite stacks in general? Obviously, you mentioned, the Dodgers and San Diego. Those are the literal best teams, but where else are you thinking?
Okay, yeah. So Dodgers and Padres are wonderful chalk. Like sometimes chalk is wonderful. But I'm definitely, like I said, I'm spreading out and playing a lot of different spots. On FanDuel, we have those early games. I do think both the Indians and the Yankees are interesting. The Yankees, just because they're the Yankees and they're always interesting. And then the Indians, like, well, I said I'm playing Matt Boyd, and I am. It's still Matt Boyd, cold weather or not. Like, if you want a home run, that's who you play against. So I do like that. This little group of games, there's 3 games where they're all good pitchers and all good offenses. That's the Brewers, Twins, Braves, Phillies, and Cardinals, Reds. I think you should have, if you're multi-entering, that's the spot. You should have all those teams somewhere because they're just so good. If one of them gets the wonky bullpen game, like they still are slate-breaking type offenses. But I would rather, like, who are my favorites to most likely score? I still prefer Kansas City and Tampa ahead of them because they're facing slightly worse pitchers in a little bit better hitting situation.
Right.
So I would go Tampa and Kansas City, but I am playing some of those good teams against good pitchers.
Okay. And then is there like a cheap stack where you can mix in some of the best players and a stack? I guess you mentioned Arizona. Those guys were really cheap, but I don't know.
Yeah. So on DraftKings, it is Arizona because they're so cheap. FanDuel is easier. Like you can make almost any team pretty cheap on FanDuel. Like very few teams outside of the Dodgers and Padres have more than one really expensive batter. So you hardly even need to worry about cheap. What I would say is if you're trying to make a stack fit and it doesn't, like it's okay to leave out the best player in a stack. Like if you want to stack the Rockies, like you can leave out Blackman and play, Josh Fuentes and you're fine. Every team has cheap players to make these stacks work.
Okay. Is Trevor Story not the best player in the Rockies? I picked him.
Well, he is. The reason I said I wouldn't take Story out of your Rocky stack. You take Blackman out. Story is the best, but that's what I didn't mention. Like if you're stacking the Rockies, I think Story is the one guy you do need to have.
Okay. All right, let's dive into some. And is there anything you want to add? Do you want to say this is the guy I'm taking a stand on today? I know you're fairly spread out, but anything you want to add here before we get into individual
The
questions?
two guys that keep jumping out at me are Austin Meadows and Brandon Lau from Tampa. So I would say they're kind of the ones I'll be most over the field on, although they'll be fairly popular. There's nothing sneaky about it.
Right. Okay, great. I'm going to open this up for questions. I'm going to be in the Discord and I'm going to be in the YouTube chat, kind of jumping back and forth. And she's going to answer them all. So let's start with the donkey. It says FanDuel Cash. Okay, we talked about some of the best plays. Seager or Belly, I could only get one for the util. I've got Tatis at short.
I prefer Seager.
D-Dot, FanDuel GPP. What are your thoughts on Luis Arias?
It's interesting. I did not expect to see him leading off. And he's cheap, but still, like, I wouldn't play him without it being at least a Twins mini stack. Like, he's not really a guy I want just on his own. But even if you just have like one other guy, if you have him and Donaldson or him and Sano or something, I think that's fine.
Okay. Sable says, any interest in mixing a Rosarina into Tampa Bay stacks? Is it too cute, or is that viable in large field GPPs on DK?
It's
go for it.
You were going to say how much you
Okay.
love the guy, weren't you?
Last time I saw him, all he was doing was just blasting home runs. So it seems like a great play to me, but I don't know.
I was going to say, I mean, we don't know for sure how good he really is. He's probably really good. But I think he's more than a good play. I think he's an absolutely fantastic play in tournaments because of the price on DraftKings. He's one of those guys that will be left out of stacks. So I'm talking about how much I love Meadows and Lau.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I want him in those stacks. That is definitely not too cute.
Great.
Play him.
Okay. Same page. A. Goodman says first base, Crone or Santana in DK Cash. Thank you.
I would play Santana. Like 9 times out of 10, it's the guy in Coors, but if you can avoid Kershaw and it's close, I would avoid Kershaw.
Okay. Timotebo says DK Cash, Soler, or he says Kirkmeyer, which I imagine is Kevin Kiermaier.
Yes, I like Soler.
Okay. Is Kershaw elite? I thought maybe he was kind of winding down and not great. Am I imagining that?
Well, a lot of people are thinking that just because of how unbelievably great he was before, where he was like his own tier of guy.
Yes,
he's still absolutely elite, but he's elite at the same level as all the other elite pitchers now. He's not in his own tier.
That is just a wonderful description. Thank you, Cheese. This is the time of year where I catch up on like, all right, where am I? What did I miss?
You know what's going on. Kershaw's still good, and Rosarena hits the ball really far, apparently.
Yeah, that's all he does. DKGPP is Texas a viable stack today?
Yes, for sure. That game, like Kansas City, is the preferred side, but far more popular. It's kind of a weird looking lineup, but I mean, Gallo, obviously, I like David Dahl. I like Solak. I think Nate Lowe is also interesting. So yes.
Okay. James, with just a generic question here. Is there late swap on FanDuel?
Yes.
Great. The H Train says FanDuel Cash. You want Seager or Mookie? I feel like Seager was kind of your guy.
Ooh, actually, I would take Mookie.
Okay.
So if I'm ranking the Dodgers, just regardless of position or salary for cash, I'd go Mookie, Seager, Bellinger.
Okay. I don't even know if this is a real person, but that happens, especially early in the game, early in the season. Dre says, what do you think about Jonathan India?
Yeah, that's a real person.
Okay.
Like in general, as a player, I like him. Today, I don't think you're playing him unless you're playing other Reds. He's a young guy for the Reds. To me, like he's not really someone I'm playing on his own, but in Red stacks for the salary, yes. And he does have we'll say is a promising future.
Okay. We'll go to Shane here in the YouTube
Same
chat.
as you, Kevin, with the promising future.
Past my prime already, man. Shane says Castillo and 4 Dodgers, 3 Rays stack work, or are Dodgers must-haves on FanDuel?
Okay, say that one more time.
The question was Castillo and 4 Dodgers and 3 Rays. Would that stack work, or are Dodgers must-haves on FanDuel?
No, that's a pretty chalky build, but a good one. So if you're not concerned with ownership, I like that a lot.
Okay. Tristan FanDuel Cash is Luplow, or as I like to call him, Luplow, okay, as a last piece, FanDuel Cash.
I would say sort of, but you should assume he's going to get pinch hit for. I mean, he might not, because of the way they set their lineup. But I would ideally not like to use someone from that game in cash, but yes, he's okay. He is too cheap for facing Matt Boyd. So sure.
Okay, let's go to Gypsy's question. Any interest in the big falafel? That would be Keener Falefa. I'll work on the pronunciation.
Yeah.
Leading off for the Texas stack.
So he's a guy, like, you want him in your stack, but not really on his own. Like, he's one of those guys who's a very dull fantasy player. He's like probably a pretty good real life player, but not much, like, there's no power and there's no speed. He just kind of hits the ball around. And if they're going to score a bunch of runs, he'll be in on it. So yes, in the stack, I would play him.
I feel like he's one of those guys who all of last season and maybe the season before, if he was up, is always super cheap and always gets brought up. And it's never like, oh yeah.
Yeah. And he used to be a catcher. So he was very interesting at the catcher position. Now that he's in the infield, it's like you pretty much just want him in the stack.
That's why his name always got brought up, because catcher is always garbage.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go to Diet Pepsi, DK Cash, SP2. These are a couple of the names that I think you really liked and said can't go wrong. Castillo or Woodruff?
Yeah, love them both. If you've got the money, I would play Castillo, but it's very close. Given the salary, like, I would say generally I like Woodruff a little more points per dollar, but if you have the money, I prefer Castillo.
Okay. BJ says DKGPP, and I feel like this is what I brought up already, but he says to be different, what are your thoughts on a secondary stack with Arizona?
So the problem is if they're your secondary stack with the Dodgers or the Padres, that's going to be wildly popular because of the salary. Like, they're the only team that just fits really easily with it. I think to secondary stack them with somebody else is interesting, like Braves, Diamondbacks. Yes, I like it. But I think the easiest way to build, if you just kind of weren't paying much attention, sat down, made a lineup, it would be Dodgers or Padres with Arizona.
Gotcha. Excellent. Okay. Stan says in a GPP here, Meadows, Machado, or Betts and Luplow?
Meadows, Machado.
Rams, FanDuel GPP, Twins or Ranger stack? What do you prefer?
Twins.
Okay. Yappy says the mayor has arrived in GPPs. He's the mayor of Discord. In GPPs, I've noticed Texas has been giving up some runs in spring training. Do you prefer for a Kansas City stack 1, 3, 4 through 6, 7 through 9 hitters? It's really tough to follow, but
yeah. So the first thing I'll say is I like Kansas City. The fact that Texas has been giving up runs in spring training is totally irrelevant. Like, spring training did not happen. Like, none of that is relevant at all. But Texas is a team with a bad bullpen, so they're going to give up runs. I prefer that. Like, I want the middle of that lineup. If I'm stacking, I want Soler for sure. I probably want Perez if it's DK, and I want Dozier. And then I wouldn't really worry about whether you're top or middle or bottom. Like, get the guys you want, and then Merrifield would be next for me.
Okay, let's talk about Barnes v. Will Smith. It looks like I'm seeing maybe Barnes is in, and this would be a personal catcher for Kershaw. Is this making sense?
So I don't know if they're saying the lineup has come out. I don't know if they're going to start that way. Or did the lineup just come out? Okay, it did. Barnes is catching. So
any interest?
That's
here?
A big downgrade hitting wise. If you've stacked the Dodgers and you have Will Smith and you go down to Barnes, you've got a worse hitter. But he should be. I didn't even look at the price. I assume he's much cheaper too. He should be. Use him in stacks, but I don't like him as much just as the guy to spend on. I wouldn't really use him as your one-off catcher.
Okay, wonderful. And Devin, is lock, what is it? Is it 7 minutes after? Oh, it's 5. Okay, so we're basically
it's
right there.
Really any second now, but
now, yeah,
it's only the 2 games on FanDuel that are locking right now: the Yankees and then the Indians Tigers at 10 after.
Okay, Arlo, DK Cash, 3v3 for you, Cheese. Marte, Machado, Betts, or Lau, Turner, Pollock?
Marte, Machado, Betts.
Okay, excellent. We'll jump over here. FanDuel Cash, Myers or B. Lau?
When it's close, as much as I love Lau, like, if it's close like that, take the Padre or the Dodger today. So I'd go Myers.
Okay, great question from Sean. Cheese, is there a stud pitcher you're worried about having a short leash today?
I mean, honestly, all of them. Like, theoretically they all should be able to go 90 pitches. I don't see anyone that is like definitely gonna have a short leash, but they all have a short leash. Like if they're slightly off, there's no reason to push them. In general, I guess I would say Woodruff. The Brewers just kind of generally work that way. They're kind of like Tampa in that respect, for which I would say Glass now, except he's always kind of on the leash. Like it'll be the same as ever for Glass now. But that's part of the reason I'm spreading out so much at pitcher is theoretically they're all a little bit shorter than usual. Like no one should get 120 pitches today, if even barely over 100. So I think they're all a little limited.
Right. Okay. Now's a good time to take a second, take a breather, and say to everyone on YouTube who's watching this for free, I know you're watching right now. I'm like, wow, that guy knows his stuff. And you're not pointing at me, you're pointing at Cheese. That was wonderful, by the way, Cheese. I feel like you navigated that and explained that excellently. So give us a like, hit the subscribe button. Better yet, sign up, join in Rotogrinders Premium. We do this literally every single day leading up to lock. You get a show dedicated to baseball, and we'll break down all the best plays. So you don't want to miss out. Like, subscribe, and then join Rotogrinders. Cheese, do you want to show off maybe some of the tools that we have? And in the meantime, I can take a few questions, and then we'll jump out of here in 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, let's go over a couple of basic things for people that might be new to the site. If you haven't used Plate IQ, this is kind of the hub for research. If you want to look at player breakdowns, we have a whole video series on how to use this that Noto and I did last year. So if you want to learn more about it, watch it. But essentially, Plate IQ is going to have all the hitter stats and pitcher stats of each game. So if you want to see how does this guy do against this type of pitcher, et cetera, you flip through the games here, and you want to look at, gives you Darvish's stats over on the right versus left-handed batters versus right-handed batters. And then it's got the opposing offense here.
Oh, look at that XFIP. When I see an XFIP at 299, I know I want to lock that guy in.
Darvish is so good at baseball.
Expected fastball inning pitches.
Sure. As far as you know. On Plate IQ, there's these two other tabs. Premium reports, like if you just want to spend a ton of time digging into crazy numbers, like we've got all kinds of, like, once the season gets rolling, you can look at this recent trends and it'll show you how guys have been doing the last month versus overall. And if you're worried if someone's hurt or whatever, we might talk about that more at some point later in the season. And then this premium leaderboards will become very useful once we start getting bullpen data for the year, because it will tell you what teams have good bullpens, bad bullpens. Becomes very relevant. I mean, the data is there now, but as we see these guys pitch this year, it'll be more useful the more 2021 data we get. And hey, look, crunch time right there on the homepage. What do you know?
There we are. We've got it right on the homepage. We do have a few more questions if you want to.
Let's do. Let me. And if someone has a question about one of the tools like Plate IQ or something on Lineup HQ, just ask away and we'll get to it.
Sounds good. All right, let's go to the donkey. He says, FanDuel Cash, you want Luis Arias or the outlaw Kevin Kiermaier?
Kiermaier. Why is Devin in here telling us the real definitions for it? Let Roth believe that he was right.
No, I was trying to figure out what XFIP is, and Devin first said expected fastball innings pancake, which I really got a kick out of. Apparently, expected fielding independent pitching.
Yes.
So there you have it. Let's see. Sit Down Son says, I highly recommend watching the Roto Academy videos to anyone who hasn't yet. I had the best fantasy year I've ever had after watching them. Wonderful. I think that goes for newcomers, and that probably goes for people who play a lot and consider themselves really good plays. When you really get, a schooling from some of the pros.
Schooling.
That's
not really what you get, but yes.
Yeah. A walkthrough, the best way.
There you go. I go with that.
The best overall plans. A schooling. DK Cash, Timmy Tebow says Marte Machado or Bilal and Dozier.
Marte Machado. Like when you're in doubt in cash today, if one of your combos gets you to Machado, Tatis, or Seager, or Betts, like just go that way and just kind of punt the other spot with one of these Arizona guys.
Okay. Adrian says Biebs Castillo or Loopsaw Betts, which would be Luplau or.
Ask me that again, because that's one pitcher and one hitter versus two hitters, so I don't understand.
Right. Well, it's okay. Bieber Castillo, which is two pitchers, and then it says Loopsaw Betts.
I just don't understand the
Yeah,
question.
I don't either. Maybe he wants Bieber Luplau versus Castillo Betts.
Like Bieber's already Bieber locked, so
All right.
if it's a
We'll
question
just-
with him, you're done.
We'll just move on. All right, we'll jump over to the old Discord chat. Make sure we got everything here. And we do. We've taken all the questions. We've done all the things that we are supposed to do here. So, you want to say goodbye to the people and say, happy first day?
I do. Happy opening day. If you are new to the baseball side of things, if you're not already, you're going to be so sick of me pretty soon. I apologize. But yeah, most nights before lock, you'll get either me or Cardi on Crunch Time, and sometimes one of us will be on Grinderslive, and then I know we'll have Tuttle sometimes. I think Cards will be with us sometimes. It'll be a good mix of people here on Crunch Time, and all my thoughts at least every weekday will be in the Musings article.
Yeah. So if you don't have time to hang out with us before lock, you can always read it, and you can also check his tagged plays there on Lineup HQ, which is very helpful.
Which had like two Red Sox tagged. It was an exciting day already.
Right. Oof. Yikes. All right. We've got two questions that just came in late. We'll get those and then we'll get out of here.
Sure.
Jay Sam says, Cheese, how do you feel about Jay Bruce and a FanDuel GPP in the same lineup with Bieber? I needed the salary relief.
Yeah, I ended up with a couple of him too, just for like, I didn't put him in any of my hand-built lineups because I don't really like, I mean, he's hitting 8th against a really good pitcher. So I don't like him, but that doesn't mean I didn't play him because of how cheap he is.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers it. No, I don't like it, but yeah, I have him.
Great. I think that is like a reassuring feeling. Yep, that's me. DKGPP Fam or Jock Jams Peterson.
Oh, that's so. Assuming if you don't have any other Padres, like Fam is easily by far the better play, who's more likely to score more points. But Peterson, I mean, based on nobody's going to play him. If the wind doesn't catch one of the balls, then I mean he's more likely to hit home run than Fam. So, yeah, I mean, Fam should score more points, but you should probably play Peterson.
Okay. One final question that came in here in the YouTube. It was from Sean. Will Sandy Alcantara improve Ks this season? 6.5 K seems cheap for him today.
Probably, yeah. Like he's one of those guys that could take a big step up, but still, I don't really think he doesn't probably turn into a big strikeout pitcher as much as he turns into more of a Kyle Hendricks type, really good at limiting the hard contact, and probably will remain better in real life than in fantasy. But he is playable today. Like, I mean, he's a talented guy for the price.
Okay. Excellent stuff for Cheese, for Devin, always working hard behind the scenes. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us. We love you. We appreciate you. And we will catch you later on tonight for NBA. Cheese, you will not be on that show. Earlier, it looked like you might be.
Yeah, I was going to just ask Mean a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
I'll save that for another day.
Yeah, it would have been fun. We'll get to it soon, I'm sure. Gallo Double Dong Day Boys is how we're ending that from Ben Johnson. Gallo Double Dong Day. Guys, we appreciate you. We love you. We will catch you later on today. You have been crunched.